Hey there, welcome to the show. My name is Jim Donovan, and I am so glad that you're here. And today I am delighted to meet and have on the podcast author, medical doctor, and creator of the Kaufmann Protocol, Dr. Sandra Kaufmann. Dr. Kaufmann received her medical degree from Johns Hopkins and is currently Chief of Pediatric Anesthesia at the DiMaggio Children's Hospital in Hollywood, Florida. She's here today to talk with us about anti-aging, longevity, and her work that helps people live their best lives. This episode is packed with some excellent information. I can't wait for you to meet Dr. Kaufmann, and let's get started. Welcome to the show. I am so glad to have you here. Thanks for taking the time. I know that you just came out of the OR. Is that right?
That is right. I'm an anesthesiologist by trade, and longevity is a crazy hobby.
Oh my God. So thanks for taking the time. Before we started the recording, we were just talking about I was in the hospital last year. I had 5 rounds of anesthesia for some pretty tough health problems, and so on behalf of a patient that has been with anesthesiologists, I so appreciate the work that you do, and I get the busyness of that. So thanks for taking the time for us. I was reading through a lot of your material. There's this one testimonial that I read that really sticks out to me. It's from this guy, Dr. Viola. Mm-hmm. And he says that Dr. Kaufmann's recipe isn't a magic potion or random mixture of herbs. It's a logical application of science. And I was wondering, can you tell me about that? Like, why is this the protocol that you have different than some of the things that are out there?
So this is much different, to be perfectly honest, because when I started down this path of longevity, I was looking for answers for myself. I openly admit, and I've done it many times, that I have done this completely because I don't want to get older. So I started looking up all of these people's thoughts and concerns and suggestions, and it seemed like a whole lot of hokey stuff. No one had any nailed down science. It was all sort of reminiscent of the 1800s and the snake oil and all that kind of garbage. So what I set out to do is to sort of turn this into real science. I really wanted to know why cells did age, why our organs age, why our bodies age, and I wanted to create a program that made sense. And that's, I think, what I did. I decided that your cells age in very specific categories, and we can talk about those to some extent. And the program that I recommend to most people as a starter program is something called the Panacea, which is, maybe it does sound a little bit like snake oil, but it actually represents the 5 easiest things and more straightforward things to do for anyone that's aging. So it is magical, but it's not mystical magical. It's all based in science.
Yeah, and the fact that you're working, putting people under every day in a hospital tells me that you have a much deeper understanding than some of the products and people that you were talking about a moment ago with regards to how the body actually works. Can you tell us a little bit about your background, so some of your fields of study, so that people can kind of get a sense of where you're coming from with all this?
Sure. So I call it the eclectic background of biology. I, one point, was a tropical ecologist. So I've been in jungles chasing bats and hacking my way out of forest problems. I was a cell physiologist. I spent a ton of time looking at cells under microscopes. So my love for the smaller the better sort of stuck with me. Cells didn't pay bills. And so my dad sent me to med school, which, it is what it is. I spent a few years doing surgery. I spent a year doing neurosurgery and decided that I loved anesthesia. And I do pediatric anesthesia. And what's kind of cool about all this is you understand the body from innumerable different perspectives. So I get it from the organ level. I get it from the cell level, from every different perspective. And doing pediatrics means everything has to be sort of thought about in terms of dosage, like how a drug reacts in the body and how the body reacts to a drug and how much you need and how long it's there. And there's a whole lot of dynamics going on in terms of trying to figure out what the best thing to do in any particular circumstances. So if you bundle all of those pieces of science together, you end up with me. trying to do the right thing.
Yeah. It's such a refreshing thing to hear that there's this level of care and thought and education behind things that are talking about longevity, because you're right, there are so many things out there that are basically just trying to get you on a subscription for a supplement that people just send you every month just to make money, and who knows what's actually in the capsule, right? Because the stuff is just not regulated.
Well, my favorite thing about the capsules, and people send this to me all the time, is there'll be a capsule, the miracle capsule, with like 30,000 things packed into one.
Yeah.
And they go, aren't these things fantastic? And the answer is they might be in isolation. But by the time you sort of add it to everything else, you're not getting very much of any one thing. So it seems a bit preposterous that it actually could do anything.
Yeah.
But you're right. There are people out there trying to do that. And my goal is to make it scientific, understandable, and easy.
Beautiful. So what are some of the scientific ways that we can talk about that decelerate aging?
Okay. Well, I can try to simplify these things. And this is where people just sort of get foggy and stop listening to me. But I have narrowed it down to 7 basic categories. There are other experts that have different numbers of categories, and essentially it's the same sort of stuff, just reorganized.
Okay.
But for anyone that knows anything about business or learning, 7 is far easier than 9 or 12 or 15, right? So 7 it is, and I sat here in my office with a whole lot of Post-it notes and kept rearranging them until they fit into 7. So people may laugh, but 7 it is. So the first thing is what I call DNA alterations. And for people that are less sciencey, I like to think of that as just the informational system.
Okay.
And as you know, in the book, I have a factory analogy. And so in my factory analogy, that's just whatever information or written information is necessary to have a company. So in us, for cells, it's basically your DNA and what happens to your DNA over time. And many things can happen, but the 2 big ones are telomere loss. So over the course of time, your telomeres get shorter. And then the second thing is epigenetic modification. So as you get older, your DNA gets coated with what we can consider garbage. It's really methylation and phosphates and acylyl groups and that sort of thing. But it gets methylated, that changes, and that changes the way your body ages. So those are the 2 big things in category 1. Category 2 is, if you were thinking about a factory, it's energy, right? We all need energy.
Yeah.
And in your cells, it's mitochondria. And I don't want to get people back into the 5th grade science group, but everyone knows that mitochondria are the quote unquote powerhouse of the cell, and they fail for very specific reasons. The 2 big concerns in this category, of course, are nicotinamide deficiency. Most people are nicotinamide deficient by the time they are 40. And then free radicals. Because the mitochondria use oxygen to make energy, 1 to 5% of that becomes what we call radicalized, has a little electron stuck on there, and it acts like a little bomb and it blows things up. So we need to put out those little bombs. So in the mitochondria category, we use nicotinamide and free radical scavengers.
Okay.
This is where people start getting glassy-eyed. So that's 2. 3 is pathways. There are aging pathways that we can turn on and turn off. There are 7 mammalian sirtuins that turn off by the age of 40, and we need to get those activated. There's the AMP kinase pathway, which basically tells your body that you're starving or not starving, and people tend to activate that by going on these caloric restriction diets. The good news is, because I like to eat and I'm really bad at starving myself, is that you can take different agents that sort of mock not eating.
When you say agent, you mean like a supplement?
Yeah, absolutely. Or some drugs. So I don't like to use the word supplement, because supplement suggests that you already have something in your body and you're supplementing it. Right? And things that you don't already have are adjuvants. And then there's actual vitamins and actual minerals. And then there's just drugs.
Got it.
So I like to just think of them all as molecular agents because they work on a molecular scale. Let's see, there's the I can't speak. There, you can edit that one out. AMP kinase pathway, and then of course there's the mTOR pathway. So by manipulating these pathways, you can manipulate aging. So that's category 3. Then we get into what I call quality control. So if you have a factory, someone has to check the widgets to make sure they're working and to fix them when they're not. So this is basically protein and DNA repair mechanisms. And people always ask, well, that's ridiculous. My DNA is just fine. And the answer is, no, it's not. You have 10 to the fifth, it's a big ass number, DNA errors per cell per day. And if you don't fix them, you're getting cancer.
Wow.
Or the cell's going to die. It's not a good place to be. So you have very specific DNA repair mechanisms that, of course, go down with age. And the cool thing is that we can jumpstart that using other molecular agents. And these actually are really cool. They come from plants. One is called polypodium, and another one's called AC11, and it comes from an Amazonian vine. So I just think that's super cool.
Nice.
Let's see. Category number 5 is what I call the security system. So in my factory analogy, it's like the old security guard sitting by the door, kind of chunky, but eating donuts, but kind of trying to help you nonetheless. Your body becomes inflamed over time because your inflammatory system gets sort of turned up, and your immune system, of course, gets turned down, which is why all of these people are getting COVID and not doing so well. Well, that and other reasons. Good news is we can reverse that as well. Let's see, that's 5. 6, I call individual cell requirements because all cells are different. We want to talk about stem cells here and senolytic cells, and then just knowing that like a red cell is different than a liver cell, which is different than a bone cell. And there are specific agents that can help all of those things, which is kind of cool. Last category is waste management, because in a factory you have to take out the trash, otherwise your factory gets kind of backed up. So for your cell, that's basically one of two things. Number one, it's glycation. We all know that glucose is bad for you. I tell people that it's sticky on the outside, it's sticky on the inside. So it sticks to things. It sticks to your protein, sticks to your lipids, sticks to your DNA. And it causes problems. It makes those things not function well. And it just sort of wreaks chaos on your body. When it sticks to collagen, for example, you get congestive heart failure. If it sticks to the histones in your DNA, it triggers lupus. It does a whole lot of really bad things. And then the last thing in that category is the accumulation of something called lipofuscin. So when little organelles in your cells get recycled, there's always this little glob that gets left over. Cell doesn't know what to do with it, squishes it in the back, accumulates, and then it causes the cell not to be able to function. So in a ridiculously large nutshell, there's the 7 reasons that you age.
So you call these, on your website I saw, these are the 7 tenets of aging.
That is correct.
So these are things that are like the core of the things that you teach in your book and on your app too. Is that right?
That is absolutely correct. And you can look at aging at different levels. I chose to look at aging from a cellular level because I was a cellular biologist.
Sure.
Other people like to look at cell products. For example, a lot of people are into hormone replacement. When the cells can't make hormones, they sort of get jacked up with either growth hormone or testosterone or one of those things. And people always say, well, why is that not part of your book? And the answer is if you can make your own cells function properly, you may not need that. So step 1 is get your cells optimized. And if you still can't make those things, then we work on augmenting them. But I consider that a step 2 and not a step 1. So you'll find a lot of people disagreeing with that strategy.
And you know, I heard you say something in your description of these tenets about inflammation. I'm just wondering if I'm imagining this or that it's something real. But I remember, so I'm 52. I remember being around in the 70s and 80s, and it seemed like, and maybe this is just my memory, that people weren't as obese then, and there weren't these levels of people looking swollen. Like I see this in so many people that I know, and I'm like, what, is this just my imagination, or is this actually something that is recently happening more and more?
No, so obesity, as we all know, is a huge problem, right? People love to eat far too much and exercise not enough. Of course, excluding people that are watching or listening to your show because they're probably health nuts and it doesn't apply to them.
Yeah.
But that being said, even in the pediatric population, the obesity epidemic is outrageous. And the issue with that is many things. Number one, it's hard on your body, it's hard on your heart, your blood vessels, everything. But in terms of inflammation, adipose tissue releases more inflammatory factors than any other tissue. It's just a hotbed of it. So the more overweight you are, the more inflamed you are, which, in this COVID crisis, people are amazed that being obese is a huge risk factor. And the answer is it's a huge risk factor because when you get a little inflammation that precipitates the COVID, it just precipitates this huge release of systemic cytokinins from your adipose tissue. And it's just this negative cycle, and you're going to get worse and worse and worse. So I really think that the health crisis in this country, especially from the COVID, is secondary to the obesity epidemic. Other countries are doing much better because they tend to not be as fat as we are.
And what's changed? Has the food changed? Is it all just sedentary? I'm noticing. So I have two daughters with food allergies, and then knowing that the incidence of food allergies has gone up since the very late 90s, and then all these obesity rates have gone up. You have insight on what's changed between then and now?
I have no idea. I'm the same as you. I'm 52. My parents kicked me outside to exercise when I was young, eat reasonably normally. And granted, I'm kind of a junk food junkie, so I'm probably not the best person to hold up as an example. But we've always been busy. I think we were trained to be busy. I think video games don't help. I think all the junk food doesn't help. I think that people being trapped inside doesn't help. I don't think in today's world, you throw your kids outside and go entertain yourself for a few hours, come back when we scream for you.
Right.
I don't think that happens. I think they're on Netflix. I think, and how this precipitates obesity in the adult world, I'm not exactly sure. I just think it becomes extraordinarily bad habits.
Yeah.
The other thing, and I probably shouldn't say this, I'm sure someone will yell at me, is obesity has become a social issue instead of a health issue. And we're not allowed to say someone is overweight, et cetera, because it's body shaming. From a physician point of view, it is just so bad for you that it's inexcusable.
It's the thing, there's a balance to be struck between calling things out for a person's betterment and then being a jerk about it, right?
Oh, 100%. Being obese takes 10 years off your life. It shortens your telomeres dramatically. It increases your risk of cancer, increases your risk of heart failure. And then people are shocked when these things happen to them when they're 400 pounds. And they just need to know that it's not helpful.
Exactly. And it's easy to say it. And for folks that are in that space, it can be challenging to manage it. And the thing I'm always talking about is try to reduce the problem down to what is the first step that you can take. Today, let's one thing, get it down there and start to progress from that point rather than trying to manage something that seems impossible. I know that as a musician, if I'm trying to learn a really difficult piece, or I'm trying to get my guitar doing something and then my voice doing something else, that I can't do it right away. I have to reduce it to what's this movement and what's that movement? Okay, now how do I do the first phrase, and then build it out from there. So that makes sense to me.
Well, you will laugh. My daughter is a musician. She's a bass player, and she plays stand-up bass, and she also plays electric bass.
Cool.
And she also sings, and they asked her to do the two things together at one point. And it was really funny because she had the chords written on one forearm and the lyrics written on the other. So it was more like that's quite awesome. Entertaining.
I love that. I love that. There's been this push towards health tech. There's these companies like Headspace and Calm, and I know that you have an app as well. What got you into that space? Why did you decide to put all this into app form?
All right. Well, there's one small caveat. The app at the moment is down because my developers are terrible. So we are rebuilding it, and it will be re-released. So no one jump into it quite yet. But the reason that there is an app is because I'm an anesthesiologist. I do not have a longevity clinic. If people want to call and talk to me or send me emails, I answer everything all the time.
Yeah.
At the same time, I just ran out of time. So I wanted to put my algorithm someplace that people could follow it and gain the benefit without actually having to talk to me, right? So, for some minimal amount, which paid for the app to be developed, I don't know, $3-4, if you put all of your personal information in that I found relevant to determining what they should just best be on, it just sort of spits out an answer for them. And I wanted to make that available just because I thought it was good information. And I tried to make it so that people could figure it out all by themselves on the website and in the book. And I think I just created sort of a state of chaos and panic. So I thought if I give them actual directions, it might be easier. And that's why there's an app.
Great. So what will be new about the one that's coming next?
More information, more options, hopefully better usability. I don't have a tech bone in my body, to be honest with you. I can save you if you're dying, but don't ask me to log onto computers or write software or whatever it is. So when we did it the first time, I was sort of relying on people to help me out, and there were just a bunch of bumps. So we are now trying to make those bumps go away because I want people to have a better user experience.
Yeah, so it's a way of spreading your gift out to more people, empowering them to do this for themselves, and then that way you can keep doing the high level teaching through your books, through your talks, through podcasts, all that stuff. That makes good sense.
Yeah.
So what are some of the big myths out there about longevity and anti-aging? I know, like we talked about at the beginning, there's a lot of shysters out there that manipulate people who are afraid about getting older, or who maybe have some sort of a condition that they're fearful about. Can you help us sort of bust some of the things that just are not true, some of the big myths?
Well, we'll start with the easy one. The easiest one is that people don't think that longevity is real. And I think it's because there have been so many shysters. So people actually look at me and they're like, oh my God, what are you trying to sell me? And I try to tell people, I'm not trying to sell you anything. Right. I don't have a line. I don't have a brand. No one pays me to do anything. I don't recommend things that I don't think are real. So the idea number one is that, yes, longevity is real. I can't make you age backwards, but I can help you get over a lot of major medical issues and slow down aging. So that's one. The other thing is that no one product or group of products is going to be perfect for everybody, which is why, again, there's an app and an algorithm. So for example, if you are diabetic, your glucoses are going to be high, so your glycation is going to be high. So when it's time to figure out what would serve you best, we lean toward agents that do incredibly well in the waste management category. So what I have done at the moment, on the book, there's 15 agents. On my web, there's 30, I believe, and I think I'm up to 40 because I'm working on a second book. And everything it just takes forever. So I apologize for the people are like, oh, you keep saying this. And the answer is yes, I'm keep writing it. I'm busy. But the idea is you pick agents that are apropos to your medical issues, right? So diabetes is the easiest example. But for example, if you have a family history of cancer, you either have bad genes or you have, you need to either increase your telomeres, change your epigenetics, or increase your DNA repair mechanisms. And again, I can't guarantee that someone's not going to get cancer, but we can sort of make sure that we can minimize risk, essentially.
Make it less likely.
Right. And if someone's already had cancer, for example, or they have areas of pathology, it means they have huge collections of senolytic cells. So for them, we sort of aim at getting rid of those cells, because once you get rid of those cells, you do significantly better. So it's personalized based on medical issues.
And I noticed that was something that really stuck out as I was looking through your material, is that you have a whole section on your website. It's kaufmannprotocol.com, and Kaufmann has two N's. And I noticed that whole list of what you're calling agents, which are the different substances, but they're not like in a labeled bottle with your name on it. You know, Dr. Kaufmann's agents for longevity. Like that's not what it is. what I saw, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, is that these are just things that you use, that you checked out, that you think are good. Is
Yeah.
that accurate?
Oh, 100%. That's exactly right. I have thought about having a line, but number one, I don't want to be seen as one of these shysters. And there are fantastic products out there. You just have to sort of know which ones are reasonable and which ones are not reasonable. For example, things with low bioavailability, they're best put in some sort of nanotechnology. And those are out there. I'm not going to make that. It's out there. Some things are fine if they're generic. For example, I tell people to take carnosine. It's a fantastic dipeptide, helps with muscle, and it's a transglycosylating agent, right? So it strips glucose off. But it's just a dipeptide. Anyone can make a dipeptide, so it doesn't matter what brand you get, right? On the other hand, like nicotinamide, there's only two real types. And I tend to recommend Niagen because it's the riboside and it's the gold standard. There are cheaper versions, but I just don't think that they are as good. So it's sort of, having weeded through all of this over the course of the last decade, it's clear that some things are better than others. And I don't make a dime out of any of this. I just want people to get a good product.
Oh, that's so helpful. I'm so glad that we're getting to talk about this, because it's not always the case that the person that's trying to help doesn't have this ulterior line of products. Like that's a pretty unique thing. And I know you do have a book. Your app is coming out again, but those are informational, right? And those, can you get those on Amazon? The book, especially on Amazon.
The book is absolutely on Amazon. It's a paperback as well as a ebook. There's some small percentage of Kindles or something that it doesn't work on. And the only reason I know this is everyone sends me hate mail about the 1% that they can't get it. And then I apologize profusely. Yeah, I don't make a ton of money doing this. I make $4 a book and probably 30 cents an ep. So this is clearly a hobby, and it's clearly a labor of love. So if anyone thinks I'm out there being a shyster, I can tell you that it's not true. And I'm working in the OR every day to make a living.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And so the book's called the Kaufmann Protocol: Why We Age and How to Stop It. Just so when you're searching on this, and I'm going to make sure that I put all these links into the show notes so that everybody can access that stuff easily. I'm wondering, so you're talking about how you've been unpacking some of these things, for over a decade. Do you have a story that you could tell us about someone that you've worked with who's used some of the ideas that you talk about, and like what's happened?
So I wish I had one. I have thousands.
Cool.
It is. I love I love opening my email every day because I get emails from around the globe. It is really amazing. People say, they read the book, or Joe Schmo gave them the book, changed their life. They feel amazing. I mean, it happens on a daily basis. It's really, really amazing. Probably the one that I'm closest to is one of my best friends who's my rock climbing buddy. And I'm 52, he must be 60, 61. And I have known him for 20 years, and I've watched him have 2 hip replacements. And at first he thought I was absolutely full of crap. And I was taking all of these things, and he was laughing his ass off at me. And finally he relented one day and said, all right, fine, what are you doing? So I put him on a program, gave him the spiel. His second hip went significantly better than his first because he was on my protocol. And I can tell you, he's a competitive rock climber at the age of 61. And he just tells everyone about the protocol, because without it, he would not be doing anything close to what he's doing.
That's incredible. That is so incredible. And so how long did it take him to come back around?
Took him, energy comes back very quickly. Energy comes back in 10 days. Healing comes back in probably 2 weeks to 3 weeks. And then there's just this sense of being good. There's no high, there's no anything. It's just a matter of having energy and being able to do what you want to do.
This is something I noticed from my own healing process. I had all my surgeries were in beginning of 2019, and just this long process of healing. I had some GI surgeries, And I can tell, I did the things that they talked about at the hospital. You need to get out and walk, you need to eat your protein, and you need to sleep, all those things. And so I'm vigilant with that. But even like a year and a half later, like I still feel the brain effects. I still feel like the little gaps in memory
Hmm.
and the fatigue. Like it's still around. And so, you know,
I can help you with that.
this is very interesting. I'm really interested in talking about
Well,
that.
what's interesting about wound healing is, so probably 2.5 years ago, I had bilateral foot surgery,
Hmm.
and they put a ton of metal in there. I think I was asleep for 6, 7 hours. It was pretty impressive.
Yeah. Wow.
Um, and I had both feet done, so I never used crutches because I thought, what is that going to do, right? So for a week, I rode around on my house on a skateboard, just sort of wheeling around, keeping my feet up. And then at 2 weeks, I put my sneakers on and I went back to my post-op follow-up. And the lady was like, "Why are you here?" And I said, "Well, I just had surgery." And she's like, "You've got to be kidding me." Like, no. So she made me take my shoes off and demonstrate that I had bandages still on. The orthopedic surgeon just absolutely lit into me for wearing sneakers and walking, but I was fine. And then he's like, "You have to wear these really stupid looking orthopedic shoes." And I said, "Well, how am I going to drive home in those?" And then he was even more livid. He's like, "You drove here." I'm like, well, how else was I supposed to get here? 2 weeks after that, I did a sprint triathlon. And then 3 weeks after that, I went to base camp Everest. So I healed incredibly quickly.
Wow. But this is because you've got knowledge of how your cells work.
I like to think so. Either
Yeah.
that or I'm just crazy. Yes.
And so you had like to do that, you knew the specific pieces to put into place so that you could get your body to do what you wanted to do in short order.
I did. So I had already optimized all of my cells since I've been on my own protocol for a while. To make bones heal faster, you use certain osteoblastic activators, and you can decelerate osteoclastic cells. So you sort of make them work faster and better.
Hmm.
You lower inflammatory rates because when you have obviously big injuries, you precipitate inflammation, and that makes healing slow down. So there are innumerable ways to sort of make your body do better based on whatever it is that you are trying to recover from.
Wow, that is so fascinating, and I'm definitely interested in talking about that.
100%. I'm more than happy to help.
Yes. So I'm wondering, um, so do you do is like a daily maintenance program for yourself, or is it just like every so often you take agents? Like how does it work exactly?
So I take agents every day,
Okay.
and I am sort of a human guinea pig because I probably take 40 some agents. And the reason I do that is, number one, I read through all of the literature and I go, well, wow, why would I not do that? The other thing is, before I recommend anything to anyone, I want to know, are there any side effects? Does it make you burp? Does it give you gas? Do you feel like crap? Blah, 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 blah. So I
Right.
want to know. And then over the course of time, you just keep seeing fantastic agent after fantastic agent, and then it sort of begets itself and you just sort of do it. Because of this, I actually created my own containers, and I meant to sell them online, and I never got around to it because people are carrying around these little old lady drug containers, not to knock over little old ladies, but they're sort of silly. So I've got my special containers, so they fit like everything over the course of a day. I just sort of nibble them as the day goes by. It's just what it is. And then I do other goofy things. Recently, I've been into red and infrared light because it actually increases mitochondrial activity. So if you sit in front of it at a certain distance for so many minutes, you can actually regenerate tissue. You can sleep better, lose weight, increase muscle mass, a whole lot of amazing things that you can do with that. So when it's time to do a little downtime or a little meditation time, I sit in front of red lights.
Wow. And is that because of is it the frequency of the light wave that causes those changes?
There are very specific frequencies in the red light and the infrared light. It's a very narrow wavelength. There's two of them. And red light is a little bit more, actually we'll flip that. The infrared goes a little bit deeper.
Okay.
The red light is a little bit more superficial. So if you're working on skin, it's red. If you want bone or muscle, it's infrared. I kind of use both. So that's something I do every day just because it's kind of fun. And it's relaxing. And then I just exercise a ton because it's fun.
Right. You know, we've in the music world, in the sound world, obviously you're aware of using ultrasound as a tool for healing. I've read some of the research about how it can help with bones, and then I've seen some conflicting research that, well, maybe it's not good for bone healing. Do you have any information about that or knowledge about ultrasound and bone healing?
I really don't, and I'm sorry to say that. I should learn that sort of thing. Yeah, I could make something up, but I really have no idea.
Yeah, no, it just made me think about how, you know, light has a certain frequency to it. It's got a certain waveform, as does sound. I mean, they're really close to each other, and I just wondered if there was.
Yeah, I mean, we use ultrasound, you know, daily to look into people. I'm sure there's some evidence that it helps with something somewhere. I just am unaware of it at the moment. And
so with the with infrared light, or even with the different agents that you're talking about, what can you tell me about how they affect telomeres? And maybe, like, for folks who haven't heard that word before, could maybe just give us an overview of what the heck a telomere even is.
Sure. So everyone knows that we have DNA, right? There's strands. If you look at them under a microscope, actually that's a lie. You'd never see them under the microscope. They're too small. But they are, if you remember from the 5th grade, they are ladders that are spherical, spirally, sorry, not spherical. So they're spiral things, and you have a zillion of them. You probably have, I don't know, bazillion base pairs, and that encodes all of your DNA. So it's all the information your cell needs to do pretty much everything. At the end of the DNA, there are sequences that code for absolutely nothing. Once upon a time, they were called nonsense DNA. Now we know that they're very specific. It's 6 letters that sort of fit together, and it's repeated over and over and over and over again. And what it is, it's where the replication devices of the DNA attach to so that you can make a new cell. Because whenever you make a new cell, you need to have an exact replication, right? The problem is every time a cell divides, it just cuts off a little piece of this. So you lose about 50 to 60 base pairs per cell per year. So just over the creeping course of time, they get a little shorter and a little shorter and a little shorter. As well, stress and a variety of other things can sort of make them shorter.
Right.
Once they get too short, the cell can no longer divide, and it's called replicative senescence. The cell just sort of gives up and dies. So in order to keep your telomeres longer, there are very few things that actually can make it longer. We're working on gene therapy now to do it, but that's sort of a little bit in the future. Yep. There's astragalus that's supposed to help a little bit. And then concentrations of that are TA65 and the 818. We don't know exactly how well they do, but it's certainly better than nothing.
Yeah.
The best thing to do is lower stress and lower the necessity of your cells to have to turn over. So that will save your telomeres.
That's so helpful. And are there specific things, like, you know, for somebody like me who's gone through, you know, traumatic surgery and super tough stuff, I'm imagining that I've taken on some damage from all the different CT scans and body scans and anesthesias. Like, can you get any of that back, or am I pretty much sunk for the rest of my life with that?
That's a good question. So it just depends. You might be able to get some of it back. The key, however, is slowing it down. So for example, if we were to put you on a longevity protocol now, we could probably significantly reduce any decline going forward. And that's kind of the important thing. And right. If your body has been under a ton of stress, it's probably the best thing you can possibly do. Because if you are trying to regrow tissue and heal and all of those sorts of things, you're probably micronutrient deficient. You probably used up a lot of the baseline necessities around your body that we really need to sort of put back.
Yeah.
So telomeres at this point it's on the list, but it's on the lower end of the list of things we can do to help you.
Got it. Very helpful. What can you tell us about your book? So I'm going to be sending people to check out the book. What can they expect in terms of how it can help them improve life, generally speaking?
Okay, so the book is many caveats, actually. The book is written in two halves. The first half is a little challenging to read. The second half is way easier to read. The reason the first half is hard is because it goes through a lot of cell biology as to why cells age. And I had to do this for several reasons. The biggest thing is that when I started doing this, no one in the field of longevity had any idea who I was. And I needed to sort of demonstrate that this knowledge was real and I wasn't just some crazy human.
Right.
So it's there to demonstrate that, yes, science is real, etc. As people are going through that, it's written for three types of people, because again, I had no idea if anyone would read this. Turns out a whole lot of people have. The prose in the middle is sort of middle of the road. It can be tough to get through, but it's certainly doable. For scientists that wanted more information, there are quotes in italics that are definitely more specific and science-oriented. And for those people that are just trying to get through it, but they're not doing so great, there's a whole lot of really bad jokes in the margins. So some people just go from joke to joke, and I'm totally cool with that. The other thing is, if you just want to skip to the beginning of each chapter and read the first 2 pages, you'll get the gist without being totally overwhelmed. And if you are totally overwhelmed, skip to the second half, and it's far easier to read, because that's when you get to the top 15 agents. And, there's entertaining stories about where they came from and what they do and what you need to do and that sort of thing. But it'll never be a national bestseller because it's challenging.
Well, it makes sense, though, because you have to establish yourself as real, for a better way, lack of a better way to say it. And then, you're serving a couple different audiences. You're serving the people that are going to scrutinize, and then serving the people that are just looking for information, from a trusted source. And so that I like that kind of a package. I think that's fascinating. So
what's really quite funny is people send me emails. Again, my email box is always very entertaining. Some people hate the jokes. Some people love the jokes. Some people hate the italics. Other people are like, why isn't everything in italics? So you can't please all the people all the time.
I tell my kids, there's a lot of people in the world.
Yes, there are. And, and the other thing that I have done is the dose range of any one given agent is huge. And everyone is kind of angry about that. But I did that for a reason as well, because I don't know who's reading this book. It could be a 90-pound woman, or it could be a 400-pound dude. Right. I have no idea. Someone could be in liver failure or kidney failure. They may be very sensitive to drugs, or they may not be, and I don't know. The other issue is that there's no given dose for any of these things. We're not treating a disease. We're trying to block aging. So there isn't a dose, and people don't seem to understand that. We're sort of in this experimental program of, well, let's see what happens. What's going to work for you? So I get a lot of hate mail about doses. So tell your folks not to send me hate mail about doses.
Don't do it, people. It's not
there you go.
Take it from me. No hate's going to help. So if someone is starting a program, so they've read your book, they're going and they're looking at the different list of agents that they can get online. I know this is like a big question. There's probably lots of different possibilities, but how long does it typically take for someone to start experiencing something new in a positive way from a protocol that they might start with you?
So it depends on where you're starting. I get 30-year-olds, I get 50-year-olds, I get 90-year-olds.
Yeah.
The worse off you are, the faster you see a difference.
Okay.
Right? So, for example, just take nicotinamide, for example. Like, I love 30-year-olds, they decide they're going to take it. And the answer is they don't need it because they have plenty already. They're not going to feel a darn thing.
Yeah.
50-year-olds, it usually takes about 10 days. 90-year-olds, I tell you, 5-6 days, they are jumping up and down.
Wow.
So it just sort of depends. The other thing I always ask people is what their aging goals are or what their concerns are. So if someone has specific aches and pains, I can get rid of those in 5 or 6 days. If they just have no complaints and they just want to not age, you may not notice a whole lot of anything because there's nothing specific to look at. So it's very person dependent.
And does it go the other way? Like those folks that are selling the smart drugs and the nootropics, like that I like how I am, but I want some superpowers. I want some mental superpower or whatever that
Right. So
is.
the answer is, yeah, you can rev up your brain. Absolutely. Neurotropics come in various types of them. I actually take something called amoxapine. It's a neurotropic, but it's also an AGE blocker, which is why I do it. And I know it makes me a little bit smarter. I know I can multitask a little bit better. The other thing that I like to take is something called magnesium threonate. Okay. And we're all on, or many people are on magnesium because it helps with muscle and a variety of other things. But the only one that actually gets into your brain, because it has to cross the blood-brain barrier, is the composition with threonate. So over the course of time, you can actually increase your neuroplasticity if you take that. So between those two things, I think people significantly have better brain power.
That is tremendous. I know I want to take that like tonight if I can.
I take it every morning. And when I don't take it, I think that I feel a difference. It could be placebo effect. It's really hard to say. Placebo effect is generally 30%, but I truly believe that at least I feel better when I do it.
That's so helpful. So I want to give you the last word here, and then after we get off, if you could just stay on the call for a second, we can chat for a moment.
Sure.
Is there anything else that you can tell our listeners out there, in addition to some of these agents that you're talking about in reading your book, that would just be a good idea to pay attention to with regards to really increasing the likelihood that you have more healthier years?
Well, just general health information. You don't have to take all of these agents, obviously. Everything is a choice at this point. But the worst things you can do for you are quite obvious, right? Smoking will kill you by at least 8 or 9 years. Plus, it makes your skin look terrible and everything else. Being obese is absolutely horrible. Getting COVID isn't going to be all that helpful either. Just generally eat better, right? The darker the vegetable, the more anthocyanins that tend to be good for you. Stay out of the sun, don't kill yourself. Just normal things that everyone knows. The other thing is, if you're going to start anything at all, start metformin. It's the easiest thing to do. Millions and millions and millions of people are already on it and have very few issues with it, other than a little bit of GI upset sometimes. But it's one of the strongest things that we have. Most primary care physicians can dole it out like candy, and it's known to decrease morbidity and mortality in older people.
Metformin that's the name of it? Got it. I lied. I have one more question.
Bring it on.
So I can see that you're an exercise person. Do you integrate any kind of music into any of your routines that you do?
I can't swim without music. How's that?
Oh, wow. Awesome.
I love swimming. And so I have a water pod, and I have a variety of bits of music on there, a little slow warm up, and then I kill myself to something with a better beat, and then I've got a warm down. Absolutely. You can't climb with music really, because it's more focus oriented. Yeah. And running these days is kind of boring. Plus it's really hot. So I got to tell you, I swim every day with music. How about that?
Fantastic. So you got like some waterproof headphones and all that stuff?
Oh yeah, there's a company called Underwater something, and they make these fantastic little things. Wow. You can either download music onto it, or you can, use Pandora or Spotify or any of the music or the apps, and you just stream it into your headphones and you swim away. It's fantastic.
Wow. This has been such a great conversation. I'm so grateful that you've taken the time out of the OR to sit down and talk with me. This is great. I know my listeners really appreciate this, and I think they're going to really be excited to read your book, check out your information. So just one more time, can you just tell us the URL of your website?
So the website is super easy. It is www.kaufmannprotocol.com. I'm not very clever. Everything is Kaufmann Protocol. The caveat, it has to be Kaufmann, 2 N's. Everything is super simple. My Instagram is Kaufmann Anti-Aging. Facebook is Sandra Kaufmann. And I will tell you that my email, Kaufmann, I don't remember. It's on the website. And I personally answer everyone's questions. Takes me a little bit of time, but I promise I get to people. And every time I do a podcast, I get the blitzkrieg, and I enjoy the blitzkrieg. People just have to have a whiff of patience.
Yes, and I mean that is just amazing that you take the time to do that, given all the different things that you're doing. And we were talking at the beginning of the podcast that we're alive now. Let's have a big life. Let's have something that we can feel good about every day. And when we have tools like you're sharing here, it just makes it easier. So thank you for that. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. And if I can have the last word, only because it's kind of fun. Some people, their biggest complaint is that they don't want to live longer necessarily because they envision themselves sitting in a wheelchair with oxygen and being miserable. Yeah. So I like to stress that it's not necessarily your lifespan that we're improving, but your health span. So the idea is to be able to do everything that you want to do, be it scaling mountains, playing music, whatever, as long as possible, so that you can enjoy life as much as possible. And that's the goal here.
That's so good. Sandra, thank you so much. Hang on the call for a second. And listeners out there, thank you for tuning in. And we will see you real soon. Well, that's it for today. I appreciate you tuning in. Remember to come see us on our social media channels on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Just search Jim Donovan Sound Health.